Hey everyone, Cody Hayes here, and I'd like to welcome you to this lecture where we are still staying within bioethics, life ethics. And here we're going to look at the controversial issue of abortion. When I think of this issue, I think of my English 101 class. And I remember when I was a student in that class, we were assigned a paper, and we could write over any topic that we wanted to. But I remember that the professor stated to all of us, please do not write on the issue of abortion and gun control, because those particular topics have been done to death. And yeah, they have been, but they are still relevant. In this case, abortion. Abortion is still relevant. So what we're going to do here is we're going to look at some of the terms and issues related to abortion, and also some of the arguments made in favor and against the practice of abortion. So starting with some terms and issues, one of the first is this term called the Doctrine of Double Effect. Well, the doctrine of double effect would be the indirect result of an action. Now, on the issue of abortion, it would be that an abortion does take place, but it was not the intended result behind a particular action. When I think of the doctrine of double effect, the first thing that comes to my mind is the Catholic Church and its position on abortion. Those of you that know anything about Catholic theology, you're probably aware that on the issue of abortion, with almost any scenario that you come up with, the Catholic Church would answer, no, it is not acceptable. The one exception to that rule would be something within the doctrine of double effect. Here's an example of the doctrine of double effect. Let's say that a pregnant woman has cancer in her uterus. And so the primary goal right here now is to treat that cancer. But in treating that cancer, the woman ends up having an abortion. That's an example of the doctrine of double effect. The primary action was to treat the cancer. The abortion was an indirect result of that. To give another example of the doctrine of double effect, which this one doesn't relate to abortion, but it still relates to the topic in question. Some of you also might be aware that the Catholic Church is against the use of contraceptives. The short answer for the reason why is because they would see the use of contraceptives as violating natural law. That the purpose behind sexual relations is to procreate, and by using contraceptives, you are stopping that procreation. But some contraceptives have been shown to treat acne. So someone taking a contraceptive for the treatment of acne, but then, not, taking away, I guess you could say, the procreation, well, the primary, action here, the, intended action is to treat the acne. The lack of procreation, that's the indirect result of the action. But, again, on the issue of abortion, it would be, the indirect result that, in this example I gave earlier, the primary action was to treat the cancer. The abortion was just an indirect result of that action. Another term on the issue with abortion is what is called direct moral standing. Well, on the issue of abortion, direct moral standing declares that the unborn child is a person. Now, I have the word person in quotations. And some of you might be thinking, well, isn't it obvious that the unborn child is a person? It's not as obvious if you start asking questions about what constitutes a person. For example, many of you might say a person consists of a head, 2 arms, 2 legs. Well, if someone is born, say, missing 1 arm, is that individual still a person? Or you might say a person is someone that has a high span of intelligence. Well, a dog has more intelligence than a 1-year-old child. This computer arguably has more intelligence than a 1-year-old child. So, it's not necessarily, as black and white as some people would make it out to be when you start asking that question. But, in any case, we have another term here, indirect moral standing. Well, on the issue of abortion, indirect moral standing would be the idea that even if the unborn child is not declared a person, this unborn child still has a relationship or a kinship with those who are considered persons. And let me have a quick sip of water, and I'll focus on this point a little further. So, okay. We start to define what constitutes a person. An unborn child, and even a born child, doesn't necessarily fall within that definition. But even if they don't, the argument is that they still have a kinship with those who are. So, to continue on, let's look at some of the arguments that are made in favor of the practice of abortion. One argument is therapeutic. And this argument relates to issues, involving the life and the health of the pregnant woman. So, therapeutic reasons relating to issues that would involve the life and the health of the pregnant woman, such as, for example, is the woman healthy enough to carry the child to term and to give birth? If the answer is no, should an abortion then take place? That's the question. Another argument is eugenic. Well, eugenic would relate to issues such as, a fetal immorality. If you go to the great scholarly encyclopedia known as Wikipedia and type in the words fetal immorality, you will find a whole list of them. And here's where the question comes up on the issue of abortion. Okay, ultimately it's the quality of life. Life is more than its biological definition. So, during an ultrasound, the pregnant woman is shown that her child is going to have one of those fetal immoralities, is going to be born with that. And so, again, quality of life. Life is more than its biological definition. And the question, being the world doesn't necessarily function with people having these lists of fetal immoralities. So, is this a case where it is in the best interests of an abortion to take place because of all that will come from this particular issue? That's the question. Another term is humanitarian. Or argument, I should say, in favor of abortion. Well, humanitarian reasons would relate to issues such as rape or incest. Essentially here, if a woman has been raped or forced into, incest relationships and becomes pregnant, and all the trauma that has taken place prior to that particular action, should that woman then be forced to continue the pregnancy with everything that's taken place so far? That's the question. And of course, with what we have looked at so far, with arguments made in favor of abortion, the answer would be to those questions, should the pregnancy continue on, would be no, and that an abortion should take place. But we're going to stop here. And when we come back, we'll look at a couple of more arguments made in favor of abortion, and then we'll look at some of the arguments that are made against the practice of abortion. So take care. I will symbolically see you then.